Hello, LinkedIn and now Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to the we used to call the Prospective Force Live Show. We are now going to be referencing the Human SOS Show going forward. Hope that as those of you that followed us before will understand that switch. And for those that don't, we will try to enlighten you a bit as we go along. So, Anton, you want to open things up for us?
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for joining, for whether you're on Kevin's channel, my channel, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever. Always excited to have you. Just know the Human SOS Show is designed to truly put the human being first in organizations. And from a very practical standpoint, we really focus a lot on stress management and performance management in ways that allow people to thrive in organizations versus dampening their ability to perform because we're doing it incorrectly or putting too much stress on them. Today's focus is going to be on the art of coaching. We're going to be talking about how leaders can become better coaches and be able to get their teams to perform at a higher level through coaching. As always, we'll open up with an HR article. Today, it's relevant to coaching, and then we'll dive into kind of the process where we'll talk about different steps within a coaching process. So let's get into the outline, Kev. So like I said, the first one will be the HR news of the week. What is coaching? Then we'll talk about setting up a safe space. We'll get into setting the goal for the session. We'll talk about starting with active inquiry. Then we'll talk about closing out with reflection, setting up accountability for desired actions, and most importantly, following up on the progress. So let's get into the HR article first. And here we're talking about, first of all, what is coaching? Coaching defined as an ongoing approach to managing people, right? It's instead of in the past where we said, here's what you need to do, here's how you got to do it, now go and do it because I'm your boss and I said that. The world has shifted. That approach doesn't work. It just hurts relationships, hurts performance. So what coaching does is it creates a genuinely motivating climate for performance. We want to have people excited about chasing this performance. It improves the match between an employee's actual and expected performance, right? We're closing that gap. And then it increases the probability of an employee's success by providing timely feedback, recognition, clarity, and support, right? So this is what coaching is defined from that standpoint. It's not telling people what to do. It's leading them to the right decision that is appropriate for them, for their skill sets, their environment, their personality, but they get to decide the path. What are your thoughts on just how they define coaching, Kev?
They've done a nice job, and some of the key things about it is the motivating climate, because when we deal with people, and the struggles I see with leaders in the field is that they always struggle to have people motivated, taking initiative rather than always having to follow them around and, as the old saying goes, be in their hip pocket. And then looking at performance in terms of not just a bottom line look, but a total performance. And then part of it is about the shift from managing people to leading people is how we need to consider concept of coaching. And it's a process, because if you think of a sports coach, initially a sports coach will really be right on top of everything to make sure that everything happens as the old saying, it goes back to the basics and so on. But ultimately, when it's time for performance, where's the coach? Coach is on the sideline watching and then providing high-level leadership, but not telling everybody what to do every minute, every way. They're at that point. What we see is a progression of leadership that is so important. So yeah, how to approach people and be more effective with people.
I love the point you bring up, with the sports coach, and coaching is really two things married together. One is that coach on the sideline that's no longer a player. They're no longer directly impacting the game. They don't have direct things that they do there. They're only influencing the players and what they can do, in that situation. So as far as the second component, where does the word coach come from, right? I think it's in the 1500s that they developed the word coach, and that's that transportation thing with, two wheels that gets you from point A to point B. So that's really what coaching is about. It's taking person from point A to point B without direct involvement in their actions. You're only guiding them from the sideline. You're not actually involved in the game with them.
Well, I think of, I'm not a big free weight guy and all that. But I think of the times I've done it and had a workout buddy helping me. When you are, one of the pictures come to mind is you're really trying to push beyond your limit a bit, and you're straining and struggling. The person that is coaching you, your accountability buddy, isn't helping you pick up the bar. They're with you, and they're cheering you on or challenging you, whatever is needed. And that's more a picture of where the coaches want to be.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Hit the next slide, Kev. So now talking about the foundation of coaching, there's several basic assumptions that form the underpinnings of successful coaching. What a unique word. Employees want to succeed at work. So meaning that you need to have this kind of mindset as a leader that's an effective coach. You need to understand that employees do want to succeed. Nobody's coming to work and wants to fail. It's the environment, it's the circumstances, whether it be their life environment or their work environment, and sometimes it's even their health that impacts their ability to be successful. But don't think that people don't want to be successful. Don't think that people are naturally lazy. It's all bad circumstances that have brought that on. Employees can contribute ideas on how work should be performed. That's something that you need to have as a clear mindset as a leader. They can contribute. They're the closest to the problem. They're there day in and day out. So your job as a leader is to get out of the way and help them with questions, develop certain insights that lead into the proper realization to create the change that they need. Then employees will work hard to achieve goals that they have played a role in developing. This is a key factor. This one is so important. If your employee had a role in developing the plan and building the outcomes, setting up accountability and all that kind of stuff, the likelihood of them making it come true and actually happening is significantly higher if you just said, here's what I need you to do, here's why I need you to do it, now go. And then lastly, employees are open to learning if they recognize the value to them in terms of proof success on the job and subsequent reward and recognition. I would open this one up. Employees are open to learning if they recognize the value to them in terms of alignment to their personal vision. When you paint to them how this kind of development and this kind of support is going to help them reach their milestones, maybe professionally, maybe personally, maybe in some other ways, that's the best way to really get that motivation, is connected to their personal vision. What are your thoughts on foundations, Kev?
Well, I definitely agree with you on that. I have a real passion to help people develop how to understand and communicate their vision. And the more that people can align their vision for themselves and align it with the organization and the people around them, the better that it's going to work. And the other comment is, I'm with you. Employees want to succeed. Now, one of the challenges, and I'll share this from having looked at generations in the workforce and understanding the makeup of the workforce, I think there's one piece missing that we forget, and that is most people come to us, especially now, with already labeled, and their narrative is that they have not been successful and that there is a doubt whether they can be successful. And so one of the coaching elements, coaching as a leader, is to begin to help them see that they can indeed succeed. It's not that they don't want to, it's just that quite often they have been given a narrative that they can't. And it used to be maybe the bigger problem with that was more family centric. But I am of the opinion now that problem originates because of our education system and the fact that majority of people that are coming in the workforce now have already been labeled losers culturally by our education system. And if you want to be effective in coaching your people, your team, then keep that in the back of your mind, that you've got to help them overcome their own narratives that they've accepted. And this was something that I learned back when I was teaching. Is I had a lot of students that had been not only figuratively labeled, but truly labeled. And my first challenge was to help them either work within whatever challenge they have, or to help them overcome that narrative that they had been given, to even help them realize that they can succeed. So as a coach, part of what you've got to do is help them understand that they can succeed. And when you do that, you watch people overcome that. It's a remarkable experience when that happens.
No, and it starts with the belief that people are good on the inside, right? And that's even the broader thing. Do you believe that people are good, naturally good, and that life circumstances change that? I do, and I hope that you as leaders do as well. Hit the next slide, Kev. So the coaching role, right? So these are your responsibilities as a leader that's stepping into coaching shoes. You have to look at it from a very sacred standpoint, right? I approach coaching from a very, it's a privilege for somebody to give me permission to coach them. Whether I'm coaching a soccer team, my 9-year-old, little girls, or I'm coaching executives, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's always a privilege to be able to be their guide on this journey. And we have to understand that we can't overstep our boundaries. It's their coaching sessions. We are just a guide. We're not here to tell them what to do. We're here to create a space that pulls out insights that they already have. And that's a really important thing. So there are 4 main dimensions of the coaching role. And this is from this article. And that's not necessarily all of it and what we believe, but this is just what they're talking about. So providing direction, right? And this is not in a way that I'm telling you, here's what you do. Providing direction through questions, identifying insights, reflecting on them, pulling out information needed, using that information to create the plan. But they're doing it all. That's the biggest issue that I see with a lot of leaders. They know the answer. They've been in it for a long time. They're like, I've done this a million times. This is the best way to do it. Now go. Remember that the most important thing is for them to feel like they're part of that plan. If you're just doing that, their likelihood of buying is very small. And I haven't mentioned this in a long time, but I live by this rule that you can have 100% perfect plan, but if there's only 50% execution because that plan doesn't have the buy-in because you just provided, it's always going to be worse than a 50% perfect plan with 100% execution. Even though the numbers come out even, you're going to have significantly better results on the second one. We as leaders, we feel like we have to spend more time on these perfect plans. Plans will break down. Things will happen. Things will go imperfectly. Your job is not to get a perfect plan. Your job is to then learn, reflect on what this coach E experienced, modify things by helping them decide what they need to modify and going from there. So that's what it means to provide direction. What are your thoughts on direction, Kev?
Key word there is, and you mentioned it a minute ago, don't tell people what to do. Give them a direction in terms of what needs to be accomplished. And then as much as it's practical possible, give them room to figure out how to do it. That is such a key thing that and it comes back to a mindset or a concept that we really have to be considerate of, and that is that managing people is based on an assumption that people are like machines or robots, and that you can plug and play programs into them and always get consistently the desired result. And it's just not true. And what is really shame is that when we approach it that way, especially if someone's personal narrative already defines them as a loser or unsuccessful, whatever, you're going to compound that. So approach it that you help them. I mean, go back to the bigger version of providing direction. our vision is this. That is a huge direction. You may need to provide a little more detailed direction depending on situation, but in an ideal world, if you provide that vision and identify the task that somebody needs to do, and then open it up and let people choose those tasks based on their strengths, then your biggest job then is going to be to keep up and stay out of the way.
And I think that many leaders fail to recognize the direction is just part of it. How
Right.
people feel is also a really important aspect of coaching. Right? Your job is to empower. Your job is to make them believe that the things that they don't think is possible become possible. And if all you're doing is constantly providing directions and beating down on them, you're missing the biggest points of coaching. So improving performance, that's the second part, right? Obviously, we said coach, the word coach for 1500s, getting from point A to point B. But it's not a straight line, right? As leaders, we think like, okay, well, I laid out this plan. Here's point A, here's point B, here's this straight line. It's missing one important factor: external forces. If we live in a vacuum, yes, we can create a plan and we can make it a straight line. But the reality is there's going to be turns and twists, and wind is going to blow you over, and then other things are going to come in. So effective coaching is able to course correct before the person gets too far off course. Right? It's not about, hey, this is the perfect plan, this is the thing. No, you set them free, you start guiding them, they start generating that general course. And as you see them start to veer off, you start to ask the right kind of questions that put them back on track. You have them revisit their vision, you have them revisit their actions, you have to revisit, the leading indicators, whatever it may be that they've chosen to get them to point B, and see how are things shifting and allow them to adjust with it. So improving performance is not a straight line.
And that's so key, Anton. I did a graphic to try to capture the concept of balance, and it involves the straight line concept, which is what we typically manage to, whereas life is rarely a straight line. It is sometimes it can be curved, it can be circular, it can be all over. And what our role as a coach is to be able to help guide our folks in being balanced, because if life kicks them one direction, what they may actually need to do rather than going with it is to balance against it, depending on situation, so that improve performance that way. One of the things you shared from time to time is, they're not performing up to speed, so they need to put more hours in to perform. That may be the case. That may be actually worse and add more stress to their life, and performance suffers as a result. So you gotta, again, the concept of, if everything's straight line and goes perfectly, yeah, plug and play works, but life doesn't do that. So improving performance has to be understanding, adjusting with life, both for the person personally as well as work, because look at the pandemic right now. It has thrown a business curveball at everybody, and people are challenged how to maintain performance and survive as a result. Well, if you're already in the role of a coach and your performance improvements based on those concepts, you're likely able to respond better than those that are manager only in their approach.
Absolutely. And then the next one is opening up possibilities, right? Like I told you, your people have limiting beliefs. We all have limiting beliefs. Our job is to help them break out of it. Our job is to show them what you were doing yesterday doesn't have to be the capacity of what you're doing today. And that's ultimately helping to build that growth mindset, right? It's not a natural thing that people are born with. Growth mindset is built and created. We actually are more prone to a fixed mindset from just a, psychological and behavior standpoint. But as a good coach, this is what you do. And it starts with small steps, right? They don't think they can do something. Don't make them do the big grandiose thing. Have them do a small piece. Have them reflect on it. Have them reflect and see, was this as hard as you thought it was? Was this the roadblocks that you've painted in your head? Were they actually there? Or was some of this stuff just, psychological babble that you created in your head, and its alternative reality doesn't even exist? And you prove to them that are more capable. You prove to them with specific actions, specific inputs, you can change your outcomes.
Definitely. Again, I go back and remind folks, most of what we're dealing with today are people that are severely limited in their own minds. And because they have been convinced that they are not successful, and that, hate to be kind of crass with it, but as the old saying goes, they feel like they've been labeled losers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's not a good way to lead. So then last one is resource for removing obstacles, right? And it's helping people to not just open up possibilities, but actually work through concrete obstacles. Sometimes they're real things that are in the way, certain skill gaps, certain mindset gaps, perspective, whatever, you name it. Sometimes it's just opportunities, and it's helping people to navigate those, finding alternative pathways to get the same result that they're wanting.
Yeah. One of the challenges with obstacles, and I've even developed a couple of hashtags on this, and one of them is hashtag looking beyond, and then hashtag living beyond. Is our role as a coach sometimes is just to sit down and offer a better perspective or a bigger perspective to how the obstacles look, and help our folks that are dealing with the obstacles see beyond them, see how to get beyond them, because sometimes in our own minds, these obstacles are massive and you don't see anything but the obstacle. So the role there is let them see beyond that obstacle.
One thing to add to, the coaching role, I think there's a misconception that coaching is all about rainbows and unicorns. It's all about love on your people, hug them, more of this life coaching thing that's developed. That's not necessarily coaching. That's the thing that we've created in our society. And a lot of people that are not certified and don't understand the process of coaching become coaches. So they use the emotional side to try to get people to buy into their products and services. But this isn't about emotions. This is about very logical approaches to helping people navigate their path, whatever that path may be. So don't think you're always soft. Sometimes, and oftentimes, the best coaches have to challenge. They have to challenge you. They have to ask challenging questions to make you really think about what you're doing, why you're thinking what you're thinking. And they need to see that you can stand firm in that challenge. If you break down just because a question was asked and it challenges you, guess what? If in that environment it was bad, when you're actually trying to execute things, it's going to be even worse. So don't think that coaches are there to be soft and encourage you. That is not coaching.
Not at all. We misunderstand the concept of love, and because if we really love someone, which is a value and a role that we have, sometimes the best love we can show people is to look them in the face and say, "This is going to be gut-wrenching hard, but if you do this, you'll get on the other side of that. And by the way, if it's going to be gut-wrenching hard, you don't have to necessarily do it alone. Either I will walk through it with you, or we'll have a team member that can walk through it with you until you can get the other side." That is the way you approach it. It is definitely not always touchy-feely, make everybody feel warm fuzzy, because sometimes life will not allow us to feel warm fuzzy.
And there's a time for that. I'm not saying that you can't be warm and fuzzy. It's
Right.
just, it's not, we use the word balance a lot.
Yeah.
I think that people have over-indexed on warm and fuzzy in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
They care more about how the person feels, which is their own insecurity as a coach. That's what I see. I see a lot of coaches lacking experience, and I'm sorry to say this, and because they're insecure, they are so worried about how the client feels in the session versus the outcome of the session. And that's the wrong idea as a coach. You want to help them with the outcome first and foremost. Of course, you care about how they feel, but don't put the wrong thing in front of the other, right? The outcome comes first. Let's hit the next one. So now we're getting into the actual process, right? So if you're a new leader, or if you're a leader that wants to grow your ability to coach, this is a really important part that many people skip. is they don't set up a safe space for that conversation to occur, whether it be in that moment or on a recurring basis. So as a coach, when I sit down and I coach anybody, whether it be professionally, I've worked in companies, or I'm coaching, personally one-on-one that I'm doing now, it was always about, here's how this is going to go. Everything you share with me is confidential if you hired me. If you didn't hire me, if your boss hired me, then I'm going to let you know that some of the stuff we're going to share with your boss, not your personal experiences and not the things that you necessarily say, but the actions we've determined are correct and the outcomes we're looking for and the follow-up we expect. So I make all of this stuff clear. I tell them what they can talk about, what they can't talk about, and I really set up an environment where they feel that they are safe to share. Because when people go and they say, well, this person is not coachable. Really, are they not coachable, or you didn't set up the environment to get them to open up? It's usually the later.
Yeah, safe space too. Okay, and I've got to address this because my generation, when I can almost guarantee you, everybody that is my generation, when they saw Safe Place,
start laughing.
They grew up inside and rolled their eyes and reacted, and I go, this is where you would come out with our saying such as "suck it up, buttercup," and all this stuff. Folks, listen, anybody that knows me knows that I have no problem, if needed, to go commander on people. And there are times where that is part of a safe space. What we're talking about with a safe place is a place where you can allow people the room to grow and make mistakes, not unaccountable for them, but to make mistakes and grow from them. And sometimes that safe place includes going commander on people, and they know that because you did that wasn't because you hate them and think they're bad. It's because you really care about them and you are there to help them ultimately grow and improve for themselves, not just for your end game. So please don't go to the current concept of safe places, safe space that we've been hit with, because that's not what this is talking about. What this is talking about is a place where someone is feeling secure enough that they will be who they really are, with the idea that from that place, then they can grow and move forward. And some people, by the way, need to know, in order to feel secure, they need to know that somebody's there and going to look them in the eye and tell them, you're about to do something stupid. And without getting into it too much, this is part of the concept of group dynamic. And one of the best things to create a safe place is to have clear parameters for behaviors and so on. Because just to be honest with you, especially, and I probably going to catch some flack over this one, Anton, but male type people, part of the most secure place we can be in is when we know where the walls are. And some of us, unfortunately, are so hard-headed and we're type A off the chart. We've got to, on occasion, run at the wall, hit it, and fall back from it to feel secure. And we may not even always understand it when we do that, but knowing what our parameters are becomes a place for us to be secure and safe. And if we don't have that as a coach, if we run at the wall and run through it, we've got a huge problem with that person, because then getting them motivated to perform at anything is going to be a challenge. In fact, probably they're going to become one of your biggest detractors until they find those parameters. So please don't think of this as the current cultural
Kumbaya, my love. Kumbaya.
It doesn't involve group hugs, I mean, in current employment environment, in fact, that can become a whole different problem. So not what we're talking about with
But
this.
to that point, though, some people are highly emotional beings, and
Sure.
they need some of that, to feel that their emotions are going to be protected, and just realize your company. But Kev, you're spot on. It's more about what we mean by safe space is an optimal environment to create an opportunity for them to share as much as possible. That's what it is. Your job as a coach is to open up the floodgates and let them just pour everything out. And then as they're pouring it out, you're trying to capture the right question to ask. Because the best coaches are not going to ask you 10 questions. The best coaches know how to ask one. It's funny because I'm going through an executive coaching certification right now, and the guy's talking about, all these successful coaches, and he's like, he started coaching in '97, so he's been doing it, and he's had a lot of coaches. Like, the most expensive coaches I've ever paid for have given me the least amount of time for the highest amount of cost, and they would ask me one question that would just penetrate all the stuff I had going on and get me the insights I needed. And that comes back to coaches being secure. You as a leader, you need to be secure in your coaching. Your job is not to make yourself seem like a great coach by providing a million different questions, building these complex plans. Your job is actually to simplify. If you can do it through one question that creates all the necessary things, you're a master. Like, that's when you really reach that pinnacle. It's not possible for most people. And the reality is most people don't open up enough with their coach, at least in the beginning, to get there. But if you create a space, you have a better opportunity to do it. Let's hit the next one. So from there, now you're going to get into set the goal for the session. This is a mistake that I see very commonly. I've shadowed so many coaching sessions. You know what a bad coaching session starts with? So what do you want to talk about today?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a therapy session. Let's change this concept that we're just here to talk about feelings, and it's this open thing. There should be a framework. There's many, many frameworks out there. We'll talk about frameworks in future episodes, but you need to have a framework. And first of all, you need to sit down and say, what are we trying to accomplish? If they don't have something, let's talk about some performance things and say, what out of what you just heard, what to you stands out as the thing that you feel like we need to improve the most today? And then let them identify that thing. And then set the goal for the session. At the end of the session, what do we want to see happen with this one thing, right?
Yeah, I think about this one, Anton. If I'm a pretty handy guy. I can fix things real well. But if somebody says, "Hey, can you help me with this, whatever this is," especially if it's a mechanical this, and they don't know what it is, they just know what the symptom is. I would not go, especially if they do not have their own tools. I would not go to help them carrying one tool in my hand, or even two. The best thing that I will do is grab probably 2 or 3 different toolboxes that I have and have them with me. And then when I figure out what is the goal, where we're trying to go, then I pull out the appropriate tools to get from where we are to get to that goal. And that's part of what you need to do as a leader coach, is to figure out not only where you're going, but be prepared with a number of different tools, because the tool you use may not be the same every time, even with the same goal. Mm-hmm. It's going to shift based on the person involved. For example, just what we were talking about earlier, the tool that I may use with one person is eyeball to eyeball, saying, you need to get a hold of this idea and how hard this is going to be. On the other hand, the tool I may need to pull out in this case is a hug for someone, or at least an emotional identification and empathy. But as an effective coach, leader, you've got to be able to do both depending on what you're dealing with.
And I really like this picture. It's interesting because if you look at it, right, there's something that's a gap between where they are and where they want to be. But right. Who's holding that piece? I'm, as the coach, not holding that piece. They, as a coachee, are holding that piece. They already have it. It's just they need to figure out how to pull it out of themselves and how to use it. So I really enjoyed this picture. Hit the next one, Kev.
One other thing I wanted to mention is, and this goes into teaching as well, difference between an effective discussion session or Q&A with a group is whether or not you've got a goal. If you don't have a goal, clear-cut goal, all it is a BS session. So be sure not to get involved in that. Have a goal in mind as you approach it.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So then start with active inquiry. And this is where coaches struggle to not become advice monsters. This is where we have to sit back and realize that we can only ask questions, and how we ask those questions matters, right? It's open-ended questions, but not leading. This is where we struggle, especially as leaders. I see this not as much with coaches that are just full-time coaches. I see this with leaders who are managers who are trying to coach. They know the answer and they're trying to, have you tried this? This is one of the most common things I see from leaders trying to be coaches. That's a leading question. Like, that's not what you want to do. You want to get them to arrive there through proper questioning, but it's based on what they're saying. It's not having to come in, and this is funny too. I see coaches with their checklists, and they got all these questions like, why? You don't know what they're going to say after the first one. Based on what they say on the first one should guide the following question, which should guide the following question. If all you did is come in with a checklist, that's an ineffective coaching session. That's not active inquiry. You're not actually navigating this conversation with them, driving the bus. So, right, you ask, you investigate, you create, you discuss, you reflect, but all of that done through open-ended questions.
Yes. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. One of the things that I am struggle with because of me is listening more. You talk about the idea of too much advice. I am the one that is most guilty of being ready to give too much advice. And what I've continued to work on, because this is a challenge for me, is to active listening, which means observing. We miss so much by not practicing the skill of observing that it's unbelievable. If we stop and be quiet, use our 2 eyes and our 2 ears with people, we avoid having to ask so many questions, make so many comments, and, by the way, looking foolish and then making the person we're dealing with feel potentially stupid.
And it comes into coaching security again. You feel that your job is to be an effective coach. They have to have the right answer. Otherwise, you're a failure. No, your job is to ask questions. Let them navigate the path. And even if they fail, your job is there to pick them up with questions and have them keep moving forward. So some suggestions for active inquiry that I want you guys to, consider. One is focus on questions that move the conversation forward. This is a really important skill for coaches, right? Coaches get caught up in therapy, right? What I don't like people doing is like, well, tell me about this situation, all of this past stuff. It's not your job to know about the situation. They know the situation. Your job is to navigate them through it with questions. You may not even have all the details. That's what a consultant does. Consultant's going to sit there and say, give me all the information you got. Let me see what's happening. I'm going to give you an idea of what's going on. That's not your job as a coach. Your job as a coach is simply to move that conversation forward with action-driven questions, right? Then let the guide the process. We already talked about that. Give them some choices. But at the same time, you want to avoid hidden suggestions, avoid things like I already said, have you tried this? Asking yes or no questions. And another one that I see coaches do poorly is they ask multiple questions at once. They stack questions. That's a horrible thing to do. One question at a time. And then here's the key. Ready? Silence. It's one of the most valuable skills that a coach can have, a leader can have, is being able to sit in silence and let people process information and then follow up with, can you tell me more? That's simple. Just keep them talking, keep them moving. But unfortunately, like I said, our own insecurity, we got an answer. They haven't even finished fully expressing that answer. And we're jumping in with the next question. We're jumping in with the next suggestion. Shut up and just be quiet.
Yeah, when we throw multiple questions at people, whether we intend to or not, we're communicating our questions are more important than their answers. When I go in, I take one question at a time, because it depends on their response what the next question will be. I'm not locked into a set of questions because to me, that's where we get into this plug and play kind of model. And if that's all you can do as a coach, you need to learn about how to be an effective coach, not somebody that's just there going through the motions. There's a difference. And, we talk about today the art of coaching. That's where the art comes in is, okay, I put this question out and, I was expecting they might go this way. Well, they go that way. And if you're not ready to follow them, at least to some degree, in that direction, and give them the room to follow that direction, then you're failing as a coach. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to follow, because at the end of the day, you want to go from where they are and get understanding where they are, then already decided where the goal for them to be. And then in between, it's back to that straight line thing. It's probably not going to be a straight line, not if it's truly effective. And depending on where the person is, it is probably going to zig and zag and circle and twist to get to the other end, depending on how long you're working in that case. So don't go in with your inquiry assuming the answers you're going to get. Be prepared for whatever answer you can get. That's what an effective coach is.
The key word there is active, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not start with inquiry. Active inquiry means I'm engaged in what
Mm-hmm.
they're saying. It's not just about active listening. It's about structuring questions that are, built on top of the responses that they're providing.
Right.
The questions are not built on top of the questions. The questions are built on top of responses. And that's a key understanding that I see many leaders fail with. Let's hit the next one. So close out with reflection. This is, once again, a step that I see skipped all the time. Have them repeat back to you the insights that they gained from the session. What stood out the most? What do they see different now that they didn't before? It's that teach back that really helps to resonate that information. It's great if they had the insights in the coaching sessions, but it's better if they walked away remembering them. So I've seen this many times, and we talk about compounded growth, where we're building one coaching session on top of another versus just having scattered development sessions. This is how it happens with those reflections, seeing how their reflections are changing from one session to another, seeing how they're extracting information in a different way. That's how you know you're being successful as a coach. So have them look in that mirror, have them reflect on the coaching session in itself, and repeat the insights.
Welcome, Dr. Vishnu. Glad to have you from India. Dr. Vishnu and I have been working together on an education initiative called IIU. Another conversation for another day, but thank you for joining us. And the concept, first of all, you mentioned one you and I both know from our military background is brief back. Ask, and it's not a complicated thing. Ask the question, what did we just talk about? And then listen, and you'll find out real quickly if there was understanding or not. Second thing, and I love this graphic because one of the things I teach leaders all the time is using the mirror. In fact, Anton, I think I need to come out with a leadership mirror and market it, because I teach so much of, if you have a challenge as a leader, the first thing you do, I don't care what it is stop at the mirror. What is my part in this? And so if we do this in our coaching, we're helping people develop the habit of being a leader, even if it's leading themselves, by checking the mirror regularly. What part have I got in this? And it's just a huge help in growth and moving forward.
And that makes me think, too, that the coach should be reflecting on the session as well. Obviously, not necessarily with them. You can get feedback, but reflect yourself and see, where did I succeed with them? Where did I fail with them? If I failed in certain areas, what are the approaches I need to modify in order to break through that, right? Or if maybe the person didn't seem coachable. That's a thing that I hear all the time. Person's not coachable. Well, you just need to become a more effective coach and find a way to shift that. And that's where that self-reflection, both for the coach and the coachee, comes in. So set up accountability for desired actions. Once again, these are the later pieces that are most important that they're just falling off. The session ran out. We covered the thing. Great. No. What are they committing to? What is actually going to happen between now and the next time we have this coaching session, right? What are the expectations? What are the measurables? What are the KPIs? Whatever it is that you want to use. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to shift them away from being the victim, where they have that external locus of control, where everything is happening to them, to shifting them to an accountable individual with internal locus of control. And they realize that everything's happening because of them. And when you can do that, that's when you really become an effective coach.
And this view, I'm big on vision, okay. And the vision may be, I want to change the world. But the session at this point, this accountability it may be something as simple as, did I speak to my neighbor about this? So at this point, in terms of accountability, I love the diet analogy because so many people can identify with this. If all you look at is, well, I want to lose 10 pounds, and that's all you ever look at, and you never say, okay, I lost a half pound in the last few days, and you don't pick up on that and use that as part of your accountability, you'll give up. And so when we're doing accountability continuum, at this point, our primary view is the little steps, the little successes that are accomplished along the way. This is how we avoid getting discouraged and feeding back into the idea, well, I just can't do it.
I love what you just said, Kev, because it's so key. And shout out to Mohammed from UK. Thanks for joining me. So one thing that you just said is accountability doesn't always mean a negative thing. It's not like we're saying we're trying to catch you doing something wrong. We're actually focused more on catching you doing something right. We want to see that the things that you said, we show you that you did, and we show you those outcomes. And guess what happens in the next session? You build on it. Remember, we said opening up possibilities, showing new opportunities, making them have a growth mindset. Through positive accountability, we're able to do that. So don't shy away from accountability thinking it's all bad. We got to celebrate wins, and that comes with measuring and holding people accountable. So the last one, right? And this is where you hear me talk about compounded growth, right? I talk about this analogy. I love oak trees. I'm a huge fan of oak trees, what they represent. And an oak grows each year on top of its previous growth versus a tumbleweed. It creates really fast growth in a year, but then it dies, seeds blow over, and it creates really fast growth somewhere else. But it's very limited overall potential because it's not built year over year. Follow-up is how you create that continuous growth, how you create that compounded growth, because you've created some things in the beginning, then you know what are these steps, and you just keep following up and course correcting, right? Your job as a coach is not to outline the best plan. Your job as a coach is to minimize how far off the path they're straying by having good follow-ups.
Yeah, I like your analogy between an oak and a tumbleweed. When the storms are happening, I want to be the oak. I do not want to be the tumbleweed getting blown all over the place everywhere. I really don't. And so, yeah, that step-by-step growth, one of the pieces and that I really struggle to help people understand and overcome is measuring success. Okay, what the value of follow-up is that you are helping remind people that the success is not what happens at the end. That's a reward. Okay, success is when you take that one step forward and you gain that ground moving towards the original goal, whatever that is. That is success. And what we need as coaches is to remind people, yeah, you fell down, you failed this time, but your success was you got back up. And depending on the person and the situation, it may be that small of a concept. And then other people, you're going to set a goal and the next follow-up is going to be, wow, I was trying to get you through one step. You went 4 steps.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Let's look at it a little bit and then move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so the value of the follow-up is to help overcome failures and celebrate successes as we go along the way towards the goal. And if it doesn't happen, the people you're dealing with are going to get frustrated. They're going to get discouraged, and we're going to reinforce the loser narrative that they have in their head. Welcome, Ashfaq. Good to see you. Appreciate you joining us. So, follow-up is so key, and quite often it's not done.
Mm-hmm. And this is where, as a leader, get in the habit of scheduling the follow-up before they leave the session. Like, it just makes it easier. They leave the room, they go into the next thing, you get caught up in a million other things, and there's just the chances of this not being scheduled, they're super high. So schedule the follow-up at the end of that session, and then also let them know what the expectations for that follow-up will be. Make sure they clearly understand what you expect them to achieve by that point, what kind of growth you want to see them experience, what kind of, like I talk about leading indicators, what kind of leading indicator KPIs can they achieve by that point. We were not focused yet on outcomes, especially if it's just the beginning of coaching. We're simply focused on effort, right? We're seeing, are they putting in the effort into the things that we talked about? Outcomes may not be there. There may be additional obstacles we have to sift through and educate them on and coach them on in order for them to be able to navigate them better. But if they're putting in the work, they're putting in the effort, then you are doing the right thing as a coach up to that point. Then you got to shift eventually into that effort coming into the right outcome. So coach behaviors, measure outcomes, but don't be too quick to measure those outcomes because it may not be time yet.
Yeah. Welcome, Stanley from Nigeria. Glad to have you joining us. And I know I may be guilty of the old saying is, to a carpenter, everything looks like a nail. Well, I may be guilty here a little bit because part of what I see in this whole concept of being an effective coach is similar to being an effective teacher. Because, as a teacher, the best place that I can be is not spoon feeding people information. Best place that I can be as a teacher is facilitating them learning what they need to learn or what they want to learn. And same with the coaching setup. And so just bear in mind that we want to lead people into learning, not teach them what to do. It's hard to explain sometimes, but to me, at moments I go, this is so clear. And I have to remind myself that I do actually have some perspectives that maybe others haven't gotten yet.
And it's important for them to own it, right? And just because it's clear, just because they know it, if they didn't arrive to that conclusion themselves, the likelihood of them owning that solution is much less. So that means that the likelihood of them implementing that solution and giving it their all is much less. So, guys, that's really all we got today.
Anton, we got one of my connections, Falguni. Welcome. She's actually out West Coast. I think y'all are connected as well.
Last name Katrina?
Katira.
That's what it is. Yeah, Falguni. I know Falguni. Falguni, actually, your company's hiring. I need to maybe reach out to you and see if if you can get me a connection in Denver to get in. I might be messaging you.
One of the things here about the whole art of coaching, okay, is that, and this is the hard part to quantify and qualify, is the art part of this. And as we evaluate choosing a coach, okay, you need to ask about what we've just described. Do the coaches approach it in this fashion? Because if they don't, you're going to simply be given a program that has a partial chance of succeeding, just like diets do. Mm-hmm. And it may, for a percentage of people, it will work and it'll work great. Mm-hmm. But if you're not that percentage, which, by the way, conservatively is about 30% of people succeed in whatever these things are, the other 70% are left out in the cold. So make sure that as you approach exploring a coaching relationship, that your coach is prepared to use these concepts, because these are principles of coaching that are true and have to be considered, because if not, you're likely going to set yourself up for failure and spend money that is not going to be successful. And the other one, and I have to throw this in because Anton and I talk about this, as much as Anton and I are similar, chances are from a coaching standpoint, you're going to need to consider, like if you approach the two of us, our temperaments are different, and it would factor, because there are people that if you approach me, there's a possibility I'm not your coach because my temperament is one way, and that Anton would be your coach, and he could be the one that's going to help you most, and vice versa. So all of this you should consider. And just because someone has passed a course, and I'll try not to get on my soapbox here, just because they have a certificate or some letters after their name does not make them qualified. It makes them educated in whatever they have that in, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that they're going to be the coach for you just based on that. Look much deeper. Ask even some of the things we've covered today. Ask the question of the coach. How do you approach a coaching session? Do you set goals for the session? And so on. Ask these questions.
What's your process? Very simple question. What is your process? And if a coach can't just bam tell it to you, they need more experience. I'm not going to say they're a bad coach, but they need more experience in order, especially some of the prices the coaches charge. Like, you need to make sure that they have a process. If this person just goes, well, I kind of ask you questions and we kind of figure out your needs, and very general, that's not a process. That's a very loose understanding of what coaching is. And it means that they don't really have it down, which means that it's going to turn into a therapy session, and it's not going to be this forward action-based type of stuff that you need. So very simple question. Ask what's your process, and make sure that they can rattle it off pretty easily. At least then they've have enough experience to be a potential meet. Then, like Kevin said, comes the personality component, because I've had those clients that I look forward to training, working with, coaching, whatever the function I was doing at the time, and it was enjoyment. And I've also had those that they show up and it's like the life got sucked out of me, and it was just the wrong fit. Guess what? They were feeling the same way. That's a poor relationship. That's a waste of a lot of money. So what we want to make sure is that personality fits who it is. You don't want to put an overly emotional person with an overly logical person that has no ability to connect to emotions. That's going to be a rough conversation. And trust me, I've been there, because I've been that overly logical person trying to coach an emotional person, and vice versa. If you're trying to get a life coach kind of individual that's all about feelings, come in and coach an executive, chances are that executive is going to be running out of that room as fast as possible, because they need concrete process. Let's go, drive, make it happen.
Yeah, welcome, Vasant. Glad to have you. And Falguni has offered a comment that I think is insightful. Finding a coach is very similar to finding a life partner, because you need to match with them temperament-wise, and having an open-minded mind and willingness to listen and grow. And yes, that is true. And so, yeah, take what we've shared today. You can watch it. It's available on my profile on YouTube, our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. So if you want to check on it. One thing that we tend not to do, because we're more involved in helping people get along, but remember, we're here and we are ready to jump in and provide coaching for anyone that needs it, both individually or corporately. One of the things we do and do well is to come in and help assess. We don't come in with, here's our program, let us force you into our program. We come in and figure out through assessment where you are, and then develop a set of steps or processes based on that and our extensive background in our different areas. The value of our team is that we bring a lot of different tools. Each of us has pretty expansive toolbox to bring with us to work with your organization. And an easy first step for anyone is to go to prospectiveforce.com, and there is a link, and it says take the quiz. And this is an assessment, and it's targeted towards stress in particular, but at the end of the day, it's a good assessment to help you just get a snapshot of where you are, because part of stresses are based on us not being where we want or need to be. And this tool helps you identify. It doesn't cost you anything. The one thing we will ask for is an email. I promise, though, we won't spam you. The goal is that if you find value in it, that we can then offer you a second step, which is another free level of assessment that goes deeper. And it involves 60 assessment statements. They're not even really questions, they're statements, and opportunity to be able to find out kind of where you're at. And again, it's related to stress, but at the end of the day, it identifies areas in our life that can factor in a bigger picture. So please go and do that. And then if you want, you or your company can feel free to reach out to us, because we will sit down for a free consultation to figure out if it's a fit, because we'll tell you if it's not a fit. And if it is a fit, then explore what that would look like to be able to do so. I promise you that we want to help you achieve the goals that you have in mind, not to just buy some program that we offer.
Minimum involvement's our goal, right? We want to accomplish what you need with as little of us as possible. I mean, it's a little bit of a different approach than most people take, because we believe knowledge should be free. We'll give you all the knowledge right away. Your job is to apply it. Chances are, if you struggle with application, this is where we come in and give you the processes and the tools needed to actually apply the information. So guys, thank you so much. So blessed and to have each and every one of you on here every week. And you guys fuel us. You give us the energy to show up every week. So keep coming in and keep tuning in.
Thanks for being here. Hey, we'll be back next week, same time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time. Join us, please. We'd love to have you from the beginning. Thanks for the comments here, Vasanth and Faguni. Thanks so much for that. Come back next week and join us and bring those good questions and comments with you. Thanks. Have an amazing week. See you next week.
Bye, guys.